regular season, Harden again in Game 4. He scored 41 points in a must-win Game 3, the most points he has scored in a single game this entire postseason as they beat the Warriors in overtime. And speaking of the Warriors, will Steph Curry bust out of his slump? He's shooting 35% from the field, 25 from 3 this series. Both are the worst marks in the first 3 games of a series in his entire postseason career. But this is Stephen Curry, and the Warriors believe it is only a matter of time.
He usually has a good game.
Does he do anything that you noticed?
He's just really, really competitive, and he gets locked in, and he gets a little bit angry, and he comes out with a lot of focus and a lot of fight.
As a competitor, I know he's pissed with himself, and I think that'll bode well for us. Probably is going to lead to some aggressiveness, and we like when he's aggressive, so I think it'll be fine.
All right, so what exactly has gone wrong for Curry this series? He's just not hitting from Steph Curry range. According to Second Spectrum, he's 0 for 10 on shots from 27-plus feet after shooting 36% in the regular season. He's also missing open looks, and he's shooting 21% when he has more than 5 feet of cushion from the closest defender. That's just strange, including the wide-open dunk that he missed at the end of Game 3. That was a tough one. That was embarrassing. But we move on to Game 4. So he could be due to bounce back. Second Spectrum, which measures the likelihood of each shot going in, shows that his shots this series have been the same quality as the regular season. So there you have it, going next level on Stephen Curry. Stephen A. Smith joins us now live from Houston. And so, Stephen A., you heard the Stephen Curry numbers, and you heard what he said after Game 3. He owned it, said it was just an off night. But he is now 8 for 32 from 3 this series. That is ugly. He does have that dislocated finger, all taped up on the left hand. Overall, though, how concerned are you about the two-time MVP?
I'm not really that concerned. This is the greatest shooter that we've ever seen. How many times do you expect Steph Curry to look bad to shoot 7 of 23 from the field, to shoot 25% from three-point range? At some point in time, your resume has to matter. He's a 2-time league MVP. He's a guy that averages 24-plus in postseason throughout his career. He's a guy that's been averaging about that or better since, throughout his entire career. He is universally recognized as one of, if not the greatest shooter we have ever seen in NBA history. Clearly, his performances have not been up to snuff. He knows that better than anybody. And obviously, you would anticipate that he'll have a breakout game at some point. But to walk around here and act like suddenly he can't shoot anymore and there's something to be so overly concerned about, I think it's disrespectful to Steph Curry. We have to point it out when we see it that he's not playing up to snuff. But we need to pump the brakes when we walk around here acting like he can't rectify this situation immediately, because off nights for him are average to better than average nights in terms of shooting the basketball for most. He's Steph freaking Curry. We need to remember that.
Exactly. I will say this. Nobody on this set is doubting one Stephen Curry. Meantime, from one MVP to the reigning, James Harden looking for back-to-back 40-point games in the postseason for the first time in his career. He was much more aggressive in Game 3, Stephen A., attacking that bucket, and their entire offense ran more smoothly. Is that James Harden we need to see for them to beat Golden State in this series?
Well, I think to some degree, absolutely. He's got to put up 30-plus. There's no question. He's got to shoot better than 44 to 45% from the field, which is what I had said to Mike Wilbon just the other day, and he concurred, of course. You look at the 2 big-time three-point shots he hit, regulation and then in overtime, you got to give credit to where credit is due, because that's really been his Achilles heel. It hasn't been the ability to score or score from the field. It was his effectiveness and efficiency from three-point range. But I also think it's important to point out he's been helped along the way. You got a guy in Eric Gordon that has been playing lights out, averaging 24 a game, shooting the basketball very well, especially from three-point range. And even though Chris Paul definitely needs to be more assertive, without question, the bottom line is his numbers haven't been that bad either. He's shooting 47% from the field and better than 35% from three-point range. So let's understand, we expect more from James Harden, or pretty much more of the same, but he still has to have help in order to beat this squad.
Yeah, but overall, a very confident Rockets team, also because they've now won 4 straight at home this postseason and 11 straight at home overall. Tip-off, 9:30 Eastern time from Houston. And by the way, Stephen A., back in a minute to discuss Bucks Celtics, but real quick, former teammates Harden and KD, they're piling up these points. It's the 4th time opposing players are averaging 35 points per game through 3 games of a playoff series. Impressive company that includes an epic series between Vince Carter, Vince Sanity, and Allen Iverson way back in 2001. Kevin.
Sage, let's discuss that first game. 3 hours before tip-off of Game 4 tonight between the Bucks and Celtics. And here's video of Kyrie Irving working on his shooting. Boston is down 2-1 in the series. As you mentioned, Sage, in the last 2 games, the Celtics have lost with Kyrie shooting 30% from the floor, including 3 for 13 from three-point range. And here's video today that will make Celtics fans smile. Marcus Smart earlier today, and now news that he will play, upgraded to available tonight against the Bucks. The Celtic guard has been out since suffering an oblique tear nearly a month ago on April 7th against the Magic. Brad Stevens late this afternoon.
He'll play short stints, maybe a couple of half, but obviously monitoring how he feels, monitoring his wind, and all that comes with that. But he will be available to play short stints. I knew he was going to play. It was one of those things that you have to get approval from the trainers, and it's like the thumb up emoji, and that's it. So I knew that it was probably likely he was going to play, so there wasn't much to talk about today. There's no question he's excited to be back. People are going to be excited to have him back, and that should give us a good lift.
And Stephen A. is back with us, and last year Smart's return from a thumb injury in the first round against the Bucks helped really change that series. Where can Smart have the biggest impact a year later in this series?
How about defending the perimeter? That would be a good place to start, Kevin. Here's the reality of the situation. You don't expect him to defend the Greek freak who's about 7 feet and shooting 50% from three-point range in this series. You don't expect him to defend Chris Middleton, who's hit 13 of 23 pointers, 65% from 3 in this series. But he could help with George Hill, who's also hit 5 or 10 three-point shots in this series, which is 50%. You could expect him to help in that regard. The Milwaukee Bucks have 4 players shooting better from three-point range than Kyrie Irving, your star, is shooting from the field in this series. They're all shooting 43% or better from threes. Kyrie Irving shooting 39% from the from the field, and 27% from the three-point line. You take into account the fact that Jaylen Brown and Al Horford have given you something, and then you take into account Jason Tatum, who's shooting 0%. He hasn't hit a 3 this series. You know what? Kyrie Irving's got to step up. Marcus Smart's going to help on the defensive end of the floor, but I don't know how much he can help unless Kyrie Irving resembles the superstar that we know him to be, and somebody on Boston stops Milwaukee from hitting three-point shots.
Let's talk about the other superstar. Giannis scoring all 32 of his Game 3 points in the paint or at the free throw line. So what should Brad Stevens do to slow him down tonight?
Well, you got to collapse the paint. You got to suffocate him and turn him into that perimeter shooter. Even though he's hitting a couple of threes, he's shooting 50%, 5 of 10. I understand you got to take your chances with that shot. You can't stop him inside. He gets inside. He's going to get to the free throw line. He's going to get you in foul trouble, or he's going to make a high percentage shot. So you want to neutralize him in that regard. Crowd the paint. Make sure he shoots over guys. Don't allow any dunks whatsoever. Do what you did in Game 1 and to a lesser degree in Game 2. If you do that, you force somebody else to beat you. Now, obviously, Milwaukee has shown an ability to do that because of their ability to hit perimeter shots combined with the way that they defend. But we're talking about a Boston Celtics team that needs a best chance scenario. Marcus Smart helps in that regard. An explosion from Kyrie helps in that regard because it puts more pressure on Milwaukee to be effective offensively. And then defensively, again, you crowd the paint and you make sure they shoot over you. That is your chance, because if you're Boston and you lose tonight, the series is over in 5 games.
No doubt it's the biggest game of their season so far. We'll see how this plays out, Stephen A. If your happiness depends on Joel Embiid's health, your trust in the process is being tested in this series right now. The 25-year-old felt really good entering Game 3 against the Raptors, and the results, he was dominant. Became the first player in postseason history to post 30, 10, and 5. That line in fewer than 30 minutes of playing time. That 5 includes blocks. But then in Game 4 yesterday, hours after suggesting he might not play because of an illness, Embiid took only 7 shots, scored just 11 points in the loss, telling reporters that he required an IV early in the day. Today, the head coach, Brett Brown, on Embiid's status.
Could you update us on Joel, how he's doing, and if there are going to be any questions about him for Game 5?
I cannot update any news on Joel at this time.
Any thoughts of maybe you thought you may have played him too much yesterday?
I'm sort of a recipient of the news I get from our medical staff, and, dealing with Joel just person to person about how much he can give, how long he can go. I do not. I think that the people around Joel, led by Joel, I think that we played him to the level that we should have.
PTI's Michael Wilbon joining us now from Houston. We'll get your thoughts on that Warriors-Rockets matchup later on, but let's start with the Joel Embiid. The Sixers-Raptors series now tied at 2, Game 5 tomorrow night in Toronto. If you're Brett Brown, how much do you rely on Embiid playing?
Well, this Joel Embiid situation it's so entertaining. I mean, this is what we're going to have for the next 10 years, plus presuming he's healthy enough to be around and prominent that long. But these, hour by hour Joel Embiid updates for his own team. Joel's state of health, Joel's state of mind. This is just where we're going to be with him. And look, for a league that depends on this kind of personal interaction and identification and charisma, if you will, Joel Embiid is made for today's NBA and social media, and it must drive his coaches and his teammates crazy. I mean, last weekend in Brooklyn, I talked to a couple of guys there. Embiid was warming up behind me on the floor while we were doing SportsCenter hit, and his teammates did not know whether he was going to play that night. Many of them found out for the first time he was going to play and played well during the introductions with the PA announcer saying, and at center. So this is just the state of Embiid. This is what they're going to have to do. Yes, Brett Brown, the coach of Joel Embiid, is always going to have more drama, always going to roll his eyes because more is going to be at stake for him. I would suspect Embiid will play tomorrow, will play big minutes, and will play well. And then we're going to go back into some more drama. That's just the way it's going to be with him for the foreseeable future. It's entertaining as heck for us in the media.
In the media, not for Phil.